Hello, welcome back. This is Wildcat 5e, Team 6705, and here's another episode of this safety program introduction. Today we're going to be talking about general workshop safety. And so the first thing we have here is the official first manual on safety, and this is a good guide when you want to get started and what resources you want to have to make sure you're implementing a good safety program. And so on here you can see general safety requirements. This is the main page you want to go to, and as well as personal protective equipment and safe robot lifting as well. So just for example, hand tools. This is a very useful thing because you use a lot of hand tools in your workplace, in your workshop. And so these have very good tips, such as before using any tool, check to see if it's in good condition, which is a very standard thing to do. For example, you want to make sure that before using anything, it does not need to be repaired. And then if it does need to be repaired, it goes in the FRC repair log. This makes sure that you do not use faulty equipment, which can cause injury. So this document, which will be linked below in the description, is just very helpful for just getting information. So what I'm going to do today, basically, just talk about some resources you can use to develop resources you can get to actually develop your own team's workshop safety to best benefit your team and best improve your safety program. So next thing I'm just going to have you see is just our workshop safety and our team. Very similar to the pit safety, as you'll see in the next episode, I believe. For example, you need to have the right set of clothing, and the right set of personal protective equipment, or PPE, which is safety glasses must be worn at all times. You must have closed-toed shoes, and your loose clothing is all the way put up, and there's no jewelry or anything like that. Just you have to make sure that there's nothing on you that will in itself cause injury, and then you have to make sure you're wearing the correct equipment to prevent hazards, which is why you wear safety glasses, for example, to prevent debris going in your eyes. And just some other workshop requirements that are added on to the FRC official manual is to make sure to put all your drills in neutral. Keep the chuck keys in the drawer and not in the drill press usually, especially when you're going to turn it on. You can't have any food and drink in the workshop. Always have a buddy with you when using a power tool to make sure that there's someone there to either to unplug it if anything goes wrong. Keep the floor clean because a dirty workshop is one that's more rampant in possible injuries and thus increasing more unsafe conditions. Make sure you store tools in the proper place, like not on the edge or anything like that, because that can fall and hit people. And no horse playing, and also just listen to mentors and your coaches and the safety captain as well, and also just be aware of your surroundings. So all these links I'm going to show you are going to be in the description below. The next thing is an OSHA training manual. This will help you mostly with hazard communication, which is just kind of identifying various hazards in your workplace, personal protective equipment, which is very good just to have, to identify. This link will get you, if you click on this, for example, it gets you to here, personal protective equipment, and here has a bunch of things of different protection you would need to use in order to just, if anything will apply in your workplace, you can use this resource to see what you need to do. And the other one was back safety, which is mostly dealing with lifting. So these are some good resources to use, some more specific information on hazards, personal protective equipment, and lifting and back safety. For also something else on personal protective equipment is we're going to, I'll know what the official organization called is Canadian OSHA, which is Occupational the Canadian Center for Occupational Health and Safety. They have various fact sheets. This one's on personal protective equipment. As it says here, personal protective equipment is worn to minimize exposure to specific hazards, and they're to prevent the source from becoming a hazard into the person. And you must make sure you have your protection of all your students in your workplace. And the way to design an effective personal protective equipment program is to identify your various hazards and basically when you identify those hazards, look at ways you can prevent those hazards from becoming an issue, mostly via the use of personal protective equipment, from disabling any interference from occurring, such as like mostly just debris or cutting yourself or anything like that. And just also you need to have maintenance as well of your personal protective equipment. And for example, some other personal protective equipment not usually mentioned is noise, such as above 90 decibels, for instance. Yeah, such as above 90 decibels, noise can become very damaging. And so when that happens, you want to make sure you have ear protection on. This next page is just on drill presses. And so it says you have to read the owner's manual, and then there's just some safe work practices, such as wearing your safety glasses. Make sure the start and stop button is easily accessible. Make sure you're using a guard and clamp to clamp down everything. This is a general safety requirement, is that if you're working on something, make sure it's clamped down to either a bench or a table, and make sure that that is a clean table and that it's a flat surface and that it's steady. You don't want to be, and also just the emphasis on being a table and not like your person, because you don't want to work on your person, because that can easily cause slips of your piece you're working on and then can damage you. Such as if you're drilling something, you can drill into your leg if the piece is on your leg. And so, as well, you want to have a drill bit for your drill press. You want to have your drill press, you want to have a wood piece under whatever piece you're working on. And so if you drill through the piece, it doesn't damage your drill press. And also, if you need to, make sure you have the right, you have to make sure you have the right drill bit in the drill press as well to prevent any damage to anything as well. And then just another safety tip is that you want to make sure you're cutting away from yourself. Another safety tip is that you want to make sure you're cutting away from yourself. So you don't, with an X-Acto knife, for example, you don't want to hit your leg, for example, or not hit your leg, hit your arm when you're cutting towards yourself. And so similarly with sharp tools, you want to make sure they're facing downwards when you're carrying them and that they're not sticking out to be hurt. Also, you want to make sure they're not in your pocket as well, because that can also cause injury if you accidentally misstep. And then, let's see. This is just, and the way to get this information, again, this will be linked, is that I'll put this in the description, and you can just search for anything. For example, a drill press, you press search, and then it gets the metalworking machine drill press. And so it takes you to this page I just had up with all the safety information you need, such as keeping the workplace clean of all scraps. And then just in general, for your workplace, since it is debris and very small pieces of metal and dust, we don't want that to get into your lungs. So you want to make sure you use a vacuum to actually clean all that up. And so it's actually in a central location versus blowing it away, for example, that can potentially get in your lungs or somebody else's lungs. And then just another general safety tip is that you should not distract others and not have others distract you. And you also have to make sure you're paying attention to your work, and so you actually don't cause any damage or any hazards by mistake by just not paying attention. When you focus on your work, you're less likely to make mistakes and less likely to cause a hazard. And the next website I'm going to take you to is by OSHA. This page just has various power machines such as bandsaws, and for this one it has the hazard, the contact blades such as cutting, and then for additional safety measures, you have to maintain the blade is the proper blade and is sharp enough, and it's not just jointed or tilted or bent in any way. And also you want to have like push stick, for example, is so when you have a piece, you want to have a separate piece of wood to push it through, and so you don't have to get your hand very near their blade as much as you need to without the push stick, which goes similarly for the miter saw. As you can see here, which this website, this link I'll put in the description, you can go to various saws and presses, such as pneumatic presses and mechanical power presses, which will have your drill presses, for example. So more safety information that you can use for this page, more specifically for various power tools. And the next page is OSH Online. Again, linked in the description. This is just some more power tool safety tips. And so for this website, just again, some more tips on power tools, such as never carrying it by the cord and always carrying any item by two hands nearest to your chest, to your stomach, that area, and so you don't drop it. And make sure you secure everything with clamps. Keep cords and hoses away from heat, oil, and sharp edges so they don't cause any damage. Disconnect tools when not using them. And for example, for drills, put them in a neutral position and just make sure everything's off when you're not using it, and disconnect it so they cannot potentially be turned on and cause any damage. Keep all people away at a certain distance from wherever you're working. For example, if you have a bandsaw, you don't need everybody there at the bandsaw. Have one person at the bandsaw and have people who need to be close to it, who actually need to be close to it, at a certain distance away, so they will not unnecessarily distract the person using the bandsaw or potentially become a hazard or be in a hazardous situation. As well, you should just make sure you have good balance, as this tip says. And then just for other power tools in general, you want to make sure you don't use any electricity in a wet environment, because as we know, that can cause various electrical damage to yourself and to the machines, which creates a hazardous situation, which electrical shocks can occur, which can be lethal. And this next website is just on some more hand tool safety. And these are just some tips, such as keeping close track of your tools. Make sure you have the right tool for the job so you don't misuse a tool. You don't want to use a screwdriver as a chisel, or anything like that, because that's not a job, and so it can cause injury if you're not using something properly. And you just want to make sure that when you pass a tool to another person, you don't want to toss it to them. You want to carefully hand it to them in order they are actually getting it safely. And you also just want to, in general, use ergonomic practices to reduce harm. Ergonomics is basically doing work in relation to the human body in having it as natural and healthy and as safe as possible. And so this next document is just some more things on power tools. It just has various things in guards, hydraulic power tools. So if you just go to some random page, like I guess page 10, I'll have some stuff on electric tools. You should just have your safety captain read through all of these, read through this document, just to make sure that they are aware of all the things that happen, such as just making sure you use gloves and proper footwear when needed. Make sure they're in a dry place, and just make sure in general your workshop is well lit so you can actually see the hazards that are happening. So the next one is just on some general workshop safety policies. And for these, this is a helpful website to look at. This just has some helpful workshop policies and rules, such as make sure that you don't go over the maximum of occupancy. It's there for a reason, so they don't cause a hazard. The amount of people in there don't interfere with the walkways, because walkways are very valuable. You need to make sure that there is an available walkway for people who need it, who need to move various equipment, and so they don't have to walk over anything and potentially trip. Like, for example, tripping hazards is very dangerous in a workshop, and so you need to make sure that everything that can go in to a more enclosed location should, and so there are more open pathways and less opportunities for tripping and knocking into things, which is why in general you should have things away from the sides and towards the center as well. And the last link is just some standard operating procedures. So you want to make sure your safety captain goes through this and looks through these standard operating procedures, and make sure your people on your team as well know the standard operating procedures when they're looking at when they're using the various machines. Because, for example, from the lathe to a mill to anything, just for example, this drill press, it has all the things you need to know on how to operate this machine. And so you also want to make sure your various leads for your various mechanical, electrical, whatever, knows how to use these machines properly and instructs their members to use it properly, looking at these standard operating procedures. And so I just want to thank you again for tuning in. So this is Team 6705, Wildcat 5e. Just want to thank our sponsors, GPS Hospitality, AXA, XL Insurance Reinsurance, Griffith Engineering, and Vision Metals. Thank you for your time, and good luck.